And let's focus now on that conflict in Syria. Even as the latest round of peace talks in Geneva failed to produce progress, like all the others before it, the Assad regime and its allies are pushing on with its offensive into rebel-held territory in the country's southwest. There have been at least 14 people reported killed in the Daraa region and some 12,000 reportedly fleeing the area the last 2 days. This despite its designation as a so-called de-escalation zone. The Syrian push is also bringing the fighting closer to near Israel's northern frontier, raising the geopolitical stakes. Well, we're going to be joined from New York by our senior diplomatic correspondent, Nina Larsen. But with us from Damascus is Linda Tom, spokesperson for the UN Office for Humanitarian Coordination in Syria. And Linda, just update us on that situation in Daraa and this developing refugee situation there.
Sure. Hi. Well, the situation is extremely alarming in the south of Syria. We are deeply concerned for the safety and protection of an estimated 750,000 people in southern Syria, where hostilities are endangering civilians and causing thousands of people to be displaced.
Linda, we're talking or hearing about over 12,000 people fleeing that area. Where are they fleeing to?
Well, we're still getting reports, and as recent as today, we're getting reports of fighting and shelling that are continuing in many towns, both in the east and the west. And we're seeing people fleeing towards the border towards Jordan, but we're also seeing them flee towards Qantara Governorate.
Linda, has the UN been able to get in any sort of aid into those areas? And what have been the major challenges? Who or what is standing in the way?
Well, the situation is extremely precarious for people in southern Syria. However, the UN and our partners, we are able to continue to deliver assistance despite the increased hostilities. We do this cross-border from Jordan, and we're able to reach hundreds of thousands of people in need each month, and this is from across the border from Jordan.
Nina, of course, we have to focus on the humanitarian side, but geopolitically, there's also a lot at stake here. This is a region of Syria which, especially the United States and Israel, have shown a lot of concern in a sense, keeping a safe area. So what is the likely outcome here?
Well, the latest development is we've had yet another stern warning from the State Department, warning of serious repercussions, not just for the Syrian regime, Kalev, but also for Russia, if Russia does not pressure the regime into standing down from this offensive that they seem poised to execute any moment now. I'll just roll back a little bit. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke to the Russian foreign minister to emphasize all of this a couple of days ago, and this is the second formal written warning we've had from the US Department of State on this particular issue. This is meant to be a de-escalation zone. It was brokered between Jordan and Russia and the United States. It's meant to be a relatively safe zone for civilians, but it looks anything but at the moment.
Nina, once again, failure to achieve a political solution, and there has always been this parallel track, or at least over the last few years, of Iran, Turkey, Russia. Are they really the only players that count these days in trying to reach a political solution?
Well, on the ground, it certainly looks like it. But if we look beyond this situation, beyond the borders and right on the borders, Nurit, this is a different equation, I think. The southwest borders Jordan and it borders Israel. And we've already seen those cross-border raids that the Israeli Air Force have carried out against Iranian targets within Syria. And the King of Jordan arrives in Washington, I think, tomorrow. He's scheduled to meet with Donald Trump on Monday, but I think he meets with Secretary of State Pompeo as soon as tomorrow. This is going to be a very, very urgent situation, and I think we're going to see a flurry of diplomatic calls and maneuvers between Israel, the United States, Jordan and Russia over the coming days.
Linda, unfortunately, all that diplomatic activity didn't prevent the Syrian offensive in other areas. If that does continue, what is needed in this southern region, this Daraa region, in order to help the civilian population?
Well, what's needed is that all parties need to take every single measure to safeguard civilians. And they also need to allow the freedom of movement of people. In addition to that, civilian infrastructure, hospitals, schools need to be protected. And this is as required by humanitarian and human rights law.
Linda, I want to talk to you about a report that is sort of on the bigger picture of the atrocities allegedly committed by the Assad regime. A UN report that the New York Times is reporting on that documents at least twice this year chlorine-like substances being used. The New York Times says the report that was ultimately released was heavily redacted, took out a lot of the most horrifying details about what happened there that they say the Assad regime was behind. Why was it redacted? Why was it shortened?
I mean, we would have to, my job here is to focus on the humanitarian. And, I can't really speak to that report because that's, what we do know is that the situation in Syria has resulted in thousands of people being killed and injured. The means of verifying, how those people are being killed and injured is extremely complicated and very difficult to ascertain because we're not often present on the ground when there's active fighting. So the situation for humanitarian workers here is that it's very difficult for us to say, that this has happened, as a fact. So we need to be careful with that. For us, the main, our main objection is to reach people in need wherever they are. And we require the access to do so.
Nina, I want to look at one possible wild card in that offensive, and that is Israel, which until now has stayed out of the conflict, except for its reported airstrikes on very limited specific targets relating to arms shipments to Hezbollah and Iranian presence. But as we just heard Linda say, refugees are fleeing into the Quneitra area. That is right on that Golan frontier.
That's absolutely right. There's a very, very volatile, very fluid situation. And I can't really speculate, Kalev. I think it's anyone's guess what could possibly happen next. But I think it's fair to say that Israel and their ally, the United States, will not allow any kind of major flare-up right on that border.
All right, Nina Larsen in New York and Linda Tom in Damascus doing incredibly important and difficult work there.